Introducing the remarkable archetype, the dangerous gentleman. With a demeanor that commands respect and a hint of potency, he embodies strength tempered by virtue. Though his capabilities could veer towards danger, he channels his power for noble causes, serving others and safeguarding those in need. Rooted in a profound love for both God and humanity, he navigates life with discipline and purpose. In his presence, one witnesses the harmonious blend of power and benevolence, a testament to the true essence of masculinity. Step into the world of the dangerous gentleman, where strength is wielded for righteousness, and discover a captivating embodiment of honor and valor. Greetings and welcome to Storytime with the Dangerous Gentleman. Yes, I am the Dangerous Gentleman. No, I did not give myself that nickname, but I certainly did earn it. What do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, rock climbing, and punk rock have in common? Well, that's what the theme of today's episode is, and that theme is, I tried that once, and the benefit that you can get from trying things once. You don't have to try them again, but sometimes things are okay to try just once. So I'm going to tell you a couple of stories about each of those things and the benefit that I gained from it. So we'll start with the punk rock. We'll go in chronological order. And these are all things that I did after the age of 40. So after I moved to Yakima in 2017, I've told you the story about my partner in crime. And I don't remember if I told the story about the punk rock show. But one day she calls me up and says, "Hey, do you like punk rock?" And I was like, "Well, it's never really been my thing." And she's like, "Well, I grew up on punk rock and I love punk rock. So I want to go to a punk rock concert, but I'm a single girl and I don't want to go by myself. So I bought you a ticket. I'm paying for your ticket into the punk rock show," which was NoFX and Bad Religion, which I had heard those names, but I didn't really know anything about their music. And she said, "I paid for the tickets for the concert and I paid for the hotel. And if you'll drive us up there, let's go." She didn't want to go by herself. And I was like, all right, I understand. Right. So I spent the next couple of weeks, I actually listened to a little bit of music and I was like, okay. Like punk rock was never my thing. So we show up in Tacoma, which is like a 3-hour drive from Yakima, at this punk rock festival. And I was like, I don't know how to dress for punk rock. So I wore a pair of Chuck Taylor Converse and some red corduroy pants and something else. And we went to this concert and walked around. And yes, it was punks. And these were bands that were popular 20, 30 years prior to that. So now all the fans of these bands are like my age or a little younger maybe. And so it's all these people dressed in, and there's young people there too, but it's all these older people dressed in chains and leather and all this stuff trying to re-embody the spirit of their youth, trying to capture that again. And there's crazy t-shirts and spiked hair and all this stuff. And I felt tame, right? And for the crowd that I normally hang out with, I'm kind of tend to be the colorful, kind of out there crazy one. But here I was like, okay. And so it was a whole day long afternoon, several hours worth of punk rock. It was a whole festival and it was called Punk in Drublic, which is kind of a play on drunk in public. And so all these several other bands played and some of them were kind of cool. And then it came to the headliners, which was NoFX and Bad Religion. And at some point along the way, I lost track of my friend, which was kind of the whole point that I was supposed to be there. But she kind of made her way to the front of the stage and she ended up getting like escorted up and over the gate because she got real close and she was just super into it. So I kind of saw that when it happened and I tried to track her down. It happened at the end of the show, so I did track her down. But for most of the show, now mind you, like I said, I've never been to a punk rock show and I've seen mosh pits on TV, but I've never been in one. Somehow I ended up not just at a punk rock festival, but in the mosh pit at an outdoor punk rock festival in Tacoma. I mean, it sounds epic, and it really was. Even though punk rock wasn't my thing, like I ended up super enjoying myself just because I'm getting to experience something that, first of all, I've never experienced before, and I will probably never experience again. I'm not ruling it out, but it's not been one of those things that I've had a big desire to go do again. But it was one of those adventures. It was one of those things that I can now say that I have done. And it makes a great story. And I did it once. Did I intentionally set up? Did I decide to do that? No, but was I open to it? Yes. And I guess that's kind of the point too, is these things that you end up trying once. If you got to be open to some of these things, right? Some of these crazy things that may seem outside of what your comfort zone maybe is. And I felt good. It felt like, yeah, I experienced that and I had a good time doing it. And I was there for my friend. And now for the rest of my life, I can say that I've been to a punk rock concert and I actually did enjoy it. And it was kind of cool because we stayed there that night. And the next morning we got up and we went to a local Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And to sit there in Narcotics Anonymous meeting in Tacoma, that was a pretty cool experience too, to listen to some of these hardcore guys, that are deep in recovery, to listen to some of their stories and then get to share mine with these people. That was pretty cool. So that's my story about punk rock and a mosh pit. I had the brilliant idea that, I was going to wear a pair of white Converse All-Star shoes to this punk rock concert. And so getting stuck in a mosh pit with brand new white shoes in a muddy field probably wasn't the smartest idea, but it was kind of fun. So it all came back. All my high school football playing experience came back, and I got down low and I'm getting squatted down so I don't end up getting completely carried away by this punk rock, by this mosh pit. And I gotta say, I held my own. They tried to get me going. I wasn't going to go running around in a mosh pit. Yeah, I was at a punk rock show, but I wasn't going to get too wild and crazy. It was wild and crazy enough just being there. I wasn't going to get too bashed around, but I was sore the next day. My abs were sore. My legs were sore from being in that. It felt like I'd had a great workout. My whole body was just sore and it felt good. So that's my punk rock story. Fast forward a couple of years, I have several friends who do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and I do CrossFit. And they're always talking about jiu-jitsu and I'm always talking about CrossFit and I'm always trying to get them to come to CrossFit and they're always trying to get me to come to jiu-jitsu and we're always comparing, oh yeah, well you do CrossFit, well I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So we're always talking about our thing because both those things can be kind of cultish. People who are in them talk about them all the time and all that stuff. And so no, CrossFit's more hardcore. No, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is more hardcore or whatever it is. And you use the terminology and you're always comparing it and you're always talking about it. And so I remember one night I was at the gym, they were getting on me about something and they said, well, you should come to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu sometime. I was like, okay, give me the when and where. And so I was like, because you're not going to challenge me like that without me taking you up on it at least once. So I went to jiu-jitsu. First of all, the room was freezing cold. The heat wasn't working. So I had fun. We rolled around on mats and we learned some drills and we practiced some stuff and it was kind of fun and I enjoyed it. My feet were freezing. I couldn't feel anything from my ankle down because my feet were so cold. So then at the end, we started to do what's called rolling, which is, if you've ever been to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you know what that means. It means that you start to practice skills with people and you get out on the mat and you roll, you Jiu-Jitsu people. And of course, I've never done it before. And I had one guy who was super cool. He was kind of an instructor. And so he was kind of showing me, walking me through the techniques as we're out there doing it. But we also kind of just did our thing. And of course, I'm getting my butt kicked and every which way but loose. Every single person there had way more experience than I did. And I'm literally rolling with a guy and I'm not a small person. I weigh about 200 pounds, close to 200 pounds. And I was rolling with a guy who literally weighed twice what I weighed. And he's got years more experience. And I'm not trying to make any excuses. I did the best I could and I was exhausted and I was fighting my way out of that. But when you got a guy who weighs 400 pounds and he's on top of you and he knows more than you, it's kind of hard to get anything done. Right. But I'm not going to back down. So I rolled with him and I rolled with another guy who also had at least 100, maybe 150 pounds on me. And he had significantly more experience than me. And I know that they went easy on me, but I also know that they kicked my butt. And so I also ended up fighting a girl who I didn't outweigh, but she had several more years worth of experience than me. I'm kind of, but not really, ashamed to admit that she got me in a chokehold and I had to tap out and my throat was sore and I had a hard time talking for several days after that. So yeah, I got choked out by a girl and I'm not really ashamed to admit it because I did something that I had never done before. And I put myself in a situation that was extremely uncomfortable and I tried it and I stood up to the challenge and I did it. At least I did it once. At least I did it once. Have I gone back? No. Would I? I'm not against it, but I certainly had fun doing it once. And I learned something about myself and I learned something about other people. And now I can talk about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at least a little bit. I'm no expert, but I know and I've been to one class, so I have that experience. So fast forward then. Oh, and by the way, none of those guys have ever come to a CrossFit class with me. I've challenged them and they haven't come to a CrossFit class with me. They challenge me and I go to Jiu-Jitsu. So, I also challenged them to come out on New Year's Day and jump in the local river for a polar bear plunge, and none of them showed up. So there's that. So fast forward again a little bit. The girl that I was seeing, there was a girl that I was seeing, and she was super into rock climbing and like indoor rock climbing, outdoor rock climbing. And so she invites me. She says, "Hey, me and a couple of my friends are going rock climbing this Saturday. You should come." And I was like, and I'm terrified of heights. Heights are not my thing. And I'm not generally super coordinated, but like I went to go rock climbing and I'm kind of scared. I've rappelled before. I've climbed trees, but it's been a long, long time. And so we get there and I'm looking at all these walls. I'm like, holy crap, what am I doing? And then I get the shoes and I put on these shoes that are super tight on my feet and they're uncomfortable. If you've ever gone rock climbing, you know. And now I know, right? Because I tried it once. And so we start climbing and we go through all the stuff about belaying and being safe and all this stuff. And I was like, they've got all these routes all over the place. You can try this one, this one, this one, and they're different colors and stuff depending on the difficulty. I was like, which one should I try? And they said, well, try this one first. It's fairly simple. And they said, just go up as high as you can and then let go and we'll lower you down slowly. I was like, okay. So I start climbing up this route and I got a few feet up and it took me a few seconds to get the nerve to start. And then I started getting up there and I'm like, okay, all right, let's go. And I'm like 8 feet up and I'm like, well, then they said, well, if you feel like you want to get down at any moment, any time, just let us know and we'll lower you down. I was like, no, I got it. And so I kept going and I kept going and I kept going. And all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I'm almost at the top. I just had a few feet. And so I made the last few footholds and grabs and I made it and I, tagged the top and I was like, this overwhelming sense of accomplishment. I just did something that I was super uncomfortable with. And I had told myself before it started that, maybe I'll try a route or two and maybe I'll just hang out for a little bit and I'll just kind of tolerate it, which is kind of how I've handled things like that in the past. I'll go and I'll just tolerate whatever it is and I'll put up with it for whatever reason. In this case, it was a girl, but I ended up having a really good time. And I ended up, I don't know, climbing 6 or 8 routes. And then they have this shorter wall where it's bouldering, where you don't need to get strapped in and it's like 8 or 10 feet and you climb this wall by yourself and you try stuff, whatever. So pretty soon I found myself over on this other little wall, just climbing stuff on my own, just trying to figure stuff out. I ended up climbing some more difficult routes. I actually ended up climbing a route that was more difficult than the girl that I went with had done that day. So I felt a little bit accomplished, but ended up having a really, really good time. And now I have that under my belt. And again, I'm not a rock climber. I'm not a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist. I'm not a punk rocker, but I tried all that stuff once, right? And I think that it's super important to push yourself beyond your comfort zone sometimes and to do things because they're uncomfortable. Yes. Because they're interesting? Yes. Because they challenge you? Yes. Because someone else challenges you? Yes. Because of a girl? Of course. If you're a guy and a girl invites you to do something, I think you should try it. You might just impress them. You might not. but you might. But the point is that I feel that my life is richer and fuller than it was before I did any one of those things. And I think that I remember better the things that I've done once than the things I've done dozens or hundreds of times. I go to the gym most every single day of the week and have for several years. There are very few actual workouts that I can tell you, yeah, that was a really good one. But those that one time I went rock climbing, that one time I did jiu-jitsu, that one time I went to the punk rock show, I will never forget. And like I said, I am a richer and a fuller person in my life experiences because I've done those things. So growing up, I used to back down when people would ask me that kind of stuff. Oh, you want to go do this? I'm like, nah. You want to do this? Nah. You want to do that? Nah. And I'm not saying you have to say yes to every single opportunity, but pick a few things in your life. And when someone asks you to do something that's beyond your comfort zone, that is outside of what you really want to do, you should do it anyway. And so that's kind of the theme of this episode is try it once. I did, and I challenge you to do the same. So if you like this content, please give it a rating, a review, and share it with your friends. Also, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about me and what I'm all about and what I can maybe do for you, check out my website at thedangerousgentleman.org. That's thedangerousgentleman.org. Thank you for listening.